Thank you for inviting me to speak. I love speaking to a load of mixed audiences, but particularly women, because this is definitely something that is going to resonate with a lot of you. So it is imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is definitely something that affects most of us. It gets in the way of following our vision, of being our best selves and living our dream lives. So I'm going to really talk about how to punch imposter syndrome in its stupid face. So I'm going to just hopefully share my screen. Ooh. Just need to get on to the fact that I can share my screen. Just bear with me. Right. So I'm just going to say, can you all see that?
I don't see it right now. Maybe.
Okay. Let me try a different screen. Right. Try that again. There you go. Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Awesome. I don't know, can you also see me, or am I not visible? Just so I know. You can see me.
Yeah, we can see you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. So beating imposter syndrome is something that I've invested quite a lot of my life in. And I can pretty much guarantee that whoever's in watching this is going to be doing some of that throughout their lives too. So I really kind of want to ask you a question, in that if anybody's sort of thinking about this, is imposter syndrome is when you have that I'm in over my head feeling. You know, somebody's going to find out that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm not qualified. So if you're feeling that, or have ever felt that, that's imposter syndrome. Now, if you're not sure, it often rears its head at times like being asked to contribute to a discussion with somebody senior or more experienced in whatever industry you're in, or when you've got hired to a new job, unfamiliar territory, you've just got promoted, you feel like you've got to prove something, or being asked to speak publicly on an important topic. So, you know, if you've got one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm speaking, then imposter syndrome is sometimes a constant companion. So the great thing that I want to tell you right up front is, if you've ever felt this feeling, it's most common in high achievers. So yes, go us! If you felt this feeling, you're probably somebody that is likely to be a high achiever. So the fear of being unmasked, of being felt a fraud, a tendency to discount or diminish obvious evidence of our own abilities is imposter syndrome. So we're in a woman in STEM meeting and an AI meeting. So I want to tell you that it was first discovered in 1978 by two women, unsurprisingly. That was Pauline Clance and Suzanne Innes. So we've got ladies to thank for the original groundwork in this area that has been so useful to so many people in terms of unlocking their potential. And behavioural science research today and studies today say 70% of us will feel like this or have felt like this at some time. Now, personally, I think the other 30% are possibly lying or dead, but that's just me. So the good news is I'm an expert pretty much in imposter syndrome because I deal with it. And I'm such an expert that I feel like I have to justify being here as part of one of the first things I do. So by way of quick introduction, and just to emphasize the things that we talked about earlier. Ooh, I don't know whether that worked. Did that go on? Did we have a movement forward then? Possibly not.
I don't think so, no.
No, that's great. I was just talking about how much I love technology earlier. There you go. Ooh,
yeah, all good.
So by way of that quick introduction, this is me. I do a lot of stuff in AI and mentoring. I support diversity of all types in writing and speaking all over the world, including business growth and hacking the human brain. And I'm very, very fortunate in that people seem to appreciate the stuff I've done, and they've made me an Amazon best-selling author, and they've given me lots of cool awards, which I am incredibly grateful for, including getting to meet the Queen and Prince Charles for our Queen's Award and my MBE. And you can see that I've also been a diversity champion and some others, because eventually I get lost in updating this kind of stuff because it's not what interests me. It's just a credibility piece for my imposter syndrome. So yay. So I, like many other people, would say that I suffer from this or have suffered from this. And many of the people that feel like this are also people that have maybe got to the top of their fields. So I'm going to unpack this a bit for you today, but I want to tell you, if you've ever felt like this, you are in really good company. And I mean really good company. Good company, he says. There you go. So this is Albert Einstein. He said to his closest friend that he felt like a swindler. Albert frickin' Einstein. You know, relativity theory, massive mathematician, hugely recognized in his field. Everybody's heard of this guy. And he said, the exaggerated esteem which my life work is held made him feel very ill at ease and an involuntary swindler. I'm sure that you've all heard of Emma Watson. So UN feminism face-off, Hermione Granger in Harry Potter, Burberry model. I mean, this woman like been on the cover of Vogue. And she said she really wrestled with her success and often feels like an imposter. And she talked about feeling uncomfortable about her acting. And she said that she was terrified the night before she gave that key speech at the UN's New York headquarters, where she completely knocked it out of the park. Terrified. For those of you who are into literary stuff, I'm sure you may have heard of Maya Angelou, the author of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which is a truly inspirational book. And obviously she's a very well-known poet as well as being an author. And to quote her, I'm going to read this because I want to make sure this is right. I've written 11 books, but each time I think, oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. So those are just 3 people, just 3. But we're talking about Einstein. We're talking about Maya Angelou and Emma Watson. So there are so many people in this boat. And those are celebrities. And you could go, well, they're always going to do that, aren't they? Because they want to appear humble. So I'm going to tell you a story about me and Microsoft. So a few years ago, before ransomware was as popular as it is now, I, being autistic, started to see this trend happening. And I thought ransomware is going to be a lot bigger. So I started researching what made us vulnerable. Not, you know, I'm not an expert by any means in network security, but I know a lot of people that are. So I followed the Henry Ford model. I took my expertise, I added a lot of other people's expertise, and I wrote a pretty darn comprehensive set of documents on ransomware 101. And I took that and I started from the very basics of turn off auto run right through to settings on servers and, you know, the Microsoft Essential stuff. And so essentially I wrote what was one of, probably globally, one of the coolest, most adopted white papers. It was like sent out everywhere. It was twittered everywhere. It was linked in places. They reproduced it in magazines and things. And the reason I did that is because of what our tool set does. So Nipper, our tool of Titania, helps people close network gaps on firewalls. So it kind of seemed aligned for me to use some of that expertise for the common good. And what then happened is Microsoft contacted me and they said, ransomware is becoming an issue and we want to do a panel on it to share good practice and to help people. And would you be part of that? And I thought, I can do that. I've written all this stuff. I actually know what I'm talking about here. And being a bit of a researcher, I was like, I feel competent and confident. So I said, yeah, I can contribute. I've got something that will be helpful. We had a lovely conversation with the people there, and they said, fantastic. And potentially I was even going to go over to America. So this was a big deal. And then they sent me the bios of the other two people that were going to be appearing with me. Now, one of them was Theresa Payton. And for those who don't know who that is, she was the first ever female to serve as the White House Chief Information Officer. And she was an amazing woman who was named the most enterprising woman of the year in the United States. And the other one was Steve Wilson, who was the head of Europol European Crime Center and is an amazing contributor to our industry. And suddenly what happened is I took my internal CV and compared it to their external CVs and went, as Bill and Ted would go, I'm not worthy. Wayne's World. And I ghosted them. I ghosted Microsoft. I just disappeared off the face of the earth. I stopped replying. I was like, no. Now, I don't let that happen to me anymore. That was a big learning point for me. And even now, the thought that I didn't contribute stuff that I could bugs me. It bugs me not because I was worthy or unworthy, but because I knew that I had stuff I could contribute. And it was other people who were judging me, not myself. They'd asked me, they'd sought me out, and I didn't do it. So that isn't me anymore. So what happens when 70% of us get a compliment on our capability? Well, typically it's one of two things. Depending on the situation, we either have a moment of panic. So we might fact check, is it true? We might say we might have had help. We might say we're lucky, we just were happening to be there. Or we seek reassurance, or we kind of try and downgrade it. So, for example, it used to be that somebody would come up after a talk and say, oh, I really, really enjoyed that. And my mind inside would go, oh my God, I must have been so bad for them to take the time to tell me I was good. Have you ever done that? Have you ever kind of, somebody's paid you a compliment and think, oh, or you look great today, or I must look rough for them to tell me that. They must be trying to make me feel better. That kind of thing that goes on. So, why do we do this? So I'm massively into neuroscience. I'm autistic, so I spend a lot of time trying to understand our human operating system so I can function better in this world. And we have two different systems embedded in our brains. If we were all in one room, as we often are or used to be when I do something like this, I would ask people to do a stand-up, sit-down exercise right now. I can't do that. So instead, I'm going to ask you to kind of close your eyes and just think about this. So for those who aren't Star Trek fans, Spock on the right is representing our logical mind. So he will try and use deductive reasoning, he'll try and get data to make his decision making. And as much as possible, he's going to base his decisions on factual information. McCoy is representing our emotional mind. So the doctor in Star Trek is always going, I can't, damn it, I'm a Dr. Jim, I'm not an engineer, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. And for him to believe something is true, he just has to feel that it's true. So this is where fake news works. He lets emotions rule the day. Possibly why we have our current Prime Minister and the US President, but I'm trying not to get political. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just make this decision. Do you think you make your decisions mainly, the majority of the time, logically? Do you try and get some information? Do you get data? Do you try and find out whether it's factually true? Or do you go with gut feeling and quick judgment? Now, you'll have an answer in your head. I can't see you, unfortunately, because a lot of you are muted out. So I'm just going to ask you, put your right hand up if you think you mainly make decisions logically. Right hand up if you think it's mainly logic. And left hand up if you think it's mainly emotional. Okay. So I now want to tell you that if you think you mainly use data, you can open your eyes, if you think you mainly use data, it is physiologically impossible for you to do that. Physiologically, that means you cannot do it because you're hardwired not to. And this is why. So amygdala, peanut there, the primitive mind, frontal lobe, logical mind. These two things form separately in the womb. And what happens is it's before your neural network connects them together, you have two brains. You know, for those of you a bit older, you've got that Steve Martin film, The Man with Two Brains. We all have two brains, at least. This is a simplified version in our heads. And what happens is the chimp brain, the amygdala, is hardwired to our evolutionary survival mechanism. We have a 150,000-year-old operating system. It makes Windows XP look new. That's how old it is. It's like the Vista version of human operating systems. We are doomed to make decisions emotionally. And it kind of makes sense because if a lion's running towards you, you want to be running away from it. You don't want to be statistically calculating the odds of viable survival. If a mugger is there, you want to be having your defense mechanisms. And the challenge is that to make that happen, the chimp brain, the amygdala, gets all our sensory information first. So it gets our sight, our sounds, our facial recognition. And that happens before the logical mind even sees it. So how could we make our decisions mainly logically? There is a brilliant book by a guy called Stephen Covey, and it's called The Chimp Paradox. And there's also Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. If you've not read those and you're interested at all in understanding how you make decisions, I'd maybe start with Thinking Fast and Slow, because that's easier to comprehend and really useful for security. But essentially, the primitive mind is stronger than the logical mind. And our one beacon of hope is that they both refer back to past experience, so you can influence them both and meet in the middle. So you can pre-program yourself, and that's what the chimp paradox is about. You can pre-program yourself to such a level that the guy that did the chimp paradox actually managed to get 6 gold medalist winners in the last Olympics. So white men can run, apparently, and jump. So let me give you some physical examples so that you know that this is true. So you've all gone into a mobile phone shop. Yeah, you've kind of gone into a mobile phone shop and you go along and you pick them up and you go, oh, that's nice. And you feel it and it feels heavy, and you make a decision that that's probably a good phone. So I want to ask you a question. What has weight got to do with the efficiency of an operating system? But if it's a lightweight phone, do you think it's a bit shit? Because most people do. So why is that? The reason that is because big fat bananas have more food in, so they're probably better for you, right? So we make decisions about something that we use on a daily basis, often with our emotional mind, which is crazy. Another reason that we know that this is the case is how gaming works. So there are some games out right now that I can't play. The ones that are on the ocean, you know, those kind of ones where the sea is rolling up and down. I can't watch them because I start to feel seasick. And that is literally because your emotional mind gets involved with the game and it can't tell the difference between reality and fiction. It's the same reason why when you're gaming and you suddenly get a drop, you feel that instant of vertigo, you know, the kind of Spider-Man type games, or you get frightened And that's what the gaming industry works on, that neural response. So it's really interesting. So our minds have biases in our operating systems that people can use. And if I was talking about AI, I would talk about how those biases are being translated into what we develop for our future control of humanity. If I'm talking about marketing and sales, it's how people manipulate you. If you're talking about politics, it's how governments get you to do what they want. And how you guard your mind is important, because the emotional mind often can't tell the difference between fact and fiction. So what you put into your mind is really important. Which leads me to this. Because this emotional mind can lead us to comparing our inside view with others' outside view. And, you know, I'm 50 next year, so I didn't grow up with Instagram. I didn't grow up with social media. I didn't grow up with Twitter. I didn't grow up with Snapchat. I didn't grow up with filters, but a lot of you in the room did. And I think that the negative bias that we sometimes have as part of that primate mind, combined with the influx of other people's fake imagery, contributes to imposter syndrome. So if you've looked at Instagram, that's the Instagram life. Today is lit, hustle, grind, adulting. But really, is that really how you're feeling? So comparing our worst moments to everybody's best moments is that Instagram factor. This is what I call it. I call it the Instagram factor. So if you find that you're having imposter syndrome, just check that. Is this an Instagram factor? Because I can guarantee you that I have spent a lot of time in a lot of rooms with very senior people in multiple industries, in banking, in InfoSec, in the military. We're talking generals, we're talking CISOs, we're talking people who control multi-billion-dollar corporations. And when I'm honest with them and say, do you know what, I get imposter syndrome, they go, me too. Me too. So maybe that's why we struggle with mental health today more than we've ever done before, because our expectation of what reality should be is higher, and our disappointment when it isn't is therefore impactful, and more impactful than it's ever been before. So if any of you are either current leaders today or future leaders, like you think that you may be managing people, or you have somebody that's you're mentoring, or you've got a niece or a nephew or a sister or brother or a family member, I would ask you to share your struggles. I'm not talking about, you know, the people that's all they do. I'm talking about just sharing your struggles occasionally and taking the Instagram filter off. And the reason I say that is it gives other people permission to do the same thing. So we're not Mary Poppins, we're not practically perfect in every way. And we really need to ditch these Instagram versions for everybody's benefit, including our own. So how do we get rid of imposter syndrome? And, you know, again, would you like to know? Would you like to know how to get rid of imposter syndrome? Yeah, because kind of me too. You know, who wouldn't want to feel confident in their abilities all the darn time? All the time. Well, let me know when you get on, because that, again, is not necessarily a viable goal. But I am going to share 4 quick tips on things that I found that put imposter syndrome back in its box. So the first thing I want to share, I loved it when, you know, those lovely responsive keyboards that stop being responsive after you haven't clicked them for a while. So good. So good. Right, okay. Yay, there you go. So the first thing I would say is to run your own race. There is always somebody faster than you. There is always somebody fitter than you. There is always somebody thinner than you, more attractive than you, further along in their career than you, wealthier than you, with better advantages than you. And I don't give a flying toss, and neither should you, because the only person you have to be better than is the person you were yesterday. And you don't even have to be better than that person. It's okay to go backwards sometimes, because we're human and that's what happens. So this is me at about a size 18 to 20, probably weighed about 14 stone. The guy behind me looks in pain. He was. I was so happy. That's the end of my second half marathon in 2 weeks for charity. That's at Disney, by the way. Best place ever. I got to meet C-3PO and Darth Vader, and it was freaking awesome. But I am really, really happy. My time for my 13 and a bit miles was 4 hours and 5 minutes. Literally, the balloon ladies were behind me, but I passed people that were thinner than me. I passed people that were fatter than me. And I passed every single person that was sitting on the couch. Every single person sitting on the couch. And I still to this day look at that picture when I'm thinking, I can't do something. And this is the picture that helps me love my body wherever it is. The reason I share that is this is a talk that I sometimes do to schools. And I get a bit emotional thinking about this, so apologies. I had somebody that was probably around 17 years old come up to me at the end of one of these talks. And she said to me, almost in tears, which pretty much made me flow over, "Thank you, because I feel better about my body now," which I really normally hate. Now, she was probably a size 12. She was as trim as anything, but she was comparing herself to Instagram models. So, you know, this is the impact that really getting this can do. You only need to run your own race. So what's next? Well, to know that you're running your own race, you need to be able to acknowledge your successes. So luck helps you get somewhere. Of course it does. But you wouldn't be where you are today if you hadn't got some level of talent, some level of skill, and that you hadn't contributed some amount of hard work. It's really easy to forget the journey you've made so far. This is something I learned from somebody else. Make a success file. If you do nothing else today, start a success file. Now that could be a folder on your email. It could be wherever you've got your certificates, stick another photo album in place. Whatever it is, however you decide to do it, start a success file, because the days that you will struggle with, and we all have them, you can look into that. Every time somebody says you've made a difference, every time somebody thanks you. When people thank me now or contact me afterwards and say, here's how you made a difference, or this is something that has made me think about it, I say thank you and I put it in my success file because it's hugely valuable. I cannot tell you how valuable that success file has been to me when I've had dark times. It is a real gift. So now, if I'm judging myself, I remember that I was an autistic kid from a council estate, 6 of us in a 3-bed house. Now I am a successful kid from a council estate that grew up with 6 of us in a 3-bedroom house. And I can see the journey. So again, not time for it to do today. If this was a workshop, I would ask you to just think back 3 years ago, 1 year ago, 10 years ago. Where were you then compared to where you are now? Don't look at the day you had yesterday. Look at this as a long-term journey. The whole of your life, this is your journey. So you do not have to be like this woman with her cape on, a superhero, to be successful. Perfection isn't a viable life goal. You know, you don't have to be Wonder Woman. You don't have to be Captain America. Constantly seeking perfection is great to have fantastic results, but it's okay to just get close. It's okay. And so what if sometimes you wing it? That's how we learn, right? If you only learned to crawl when you could stand up fully, we'd all still be on our hands and knees. Learning to walk is about falling over. Learning to be the best you can be is also about falling over. So, you know, it's okay to acknowledge your successes and not be perfect. And if, oh, you know, I'm this, I'm amazing. What? You know, Tony Stark is who I'd look at then. You know, this guy, I mean, most people would say that Tony Stark was a bit of a big head. Also kind of the savior of a planet. No, he's a fictional character, but we all know people like this, right? And nobody said you had to be humble. So when you think about the sort of characters of, say, Captain America and Tony Stark, Captain America would probably be the person you'd want on your team. Yeah, that's the guy that you want on your team. Tony Stark is probably the guy you want at your barbecue. You know, if you're having a bit of a party, Tony Stark might be the guy. So there is a place for all of your personality quirks. And it's much better to be authentic than anything else. So some people and some things will never be our cup of tea, and that is okay. So I want to kind of end with one thing after saying that it's okay to have the imposter syndrome and do this anyway. You know, when you've been asked to contribute to a senior peer conversation, when you've got that new job, when you feel like this, I want to ask you to do one thing. So I want you to imagine that somebody you care about, your daughter, your son, your sister, your brother, your best friend, your lover, your partner, comes to you and says, got this new job, I don't feel I can do it, blah, 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 blah. What would you say to them? So what would you say to the person you've been mentoring, who you know has got a successful track record of learning, of developing, of continually improving? What would you say to them? Because whatever you would say to them is what you need to be saying to yourself. You need to be as kind to yourself as you would be to all those other people that you love, because if you don't, it will impact your ability to serve them. You can't love others unless you can love yourself. You can't support others unless you give yourself a break. Would that be fair? So hopefully you've now got some tools in your toolkit. We've been through a lot of different stuff. This is a summary of it. I'm really happy to share these slides with people if you want them. I'm happy to share a book list. I've also got a really cool article, not written by me, but also that has some extra tips in. But essentially, there are so many ways to combat imposter syndrome. And if you can just do some of this stuff, then I can guarantee you, you will take more opportunities, you will manage your risks accordingly, and you will grow as a person and as a human being. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was amazing. That was really good. Thank you. If you could share slides and the book list, that would be perfect. Does anyone have any questions? We're going to have about 5 minutes now, and then we're going to have another session later. So if you have any questions.
Yeah, just pop it in the chat, or we can also talk. We're opening the floor.
Oh, let me stop sharing as well. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I might ask something while people get the courage, because I feel like that's my courage. Did you have a moment when you felt like you almost beat your imposter syndrome?
I have constant moments. This is about that whole journey of falling over and getting back up again. Like if Microsoft contacted me today, the answer would be yes. In fact, I've worked with them since. You know, sometimes you've got to fail to learn the lesson. You know, like a kid with matches, you've got to burn yourself to know that the flame's hot. Some things you can't learn through other people. And there's a book called Fear the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is a bit like imposter syndrome. If you constantly have analysis paralysis, which is another thing very successful people often have, then you're limiting your ability to contribute. And actually, that's how I find that I overcome it in some ways the easiest, because it's easier for me to think an imperfect contribution is better than no contribution, than wait until I'm good enough.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else? Because I feel like maybe people feel like they don't. Oh yeah, I think.
So we got a question, and it's I wasn't entirely sure what imposter syndrome was, but I guess I'm actually going through that now since I joined a small startup, feeling a bit out of my depth. What would you advise for me, someone in my position, early career, be?
Okay, so the great thing is that that's how Titania started. So we're a multi-million company now, and I've got like 56 people working for the company. We started as some guy in a bedroom. And then I joined as the third employee, and now I'm the co-owner. So, when I ran that kind of half marathon, I started with the C to 5K. The first step on the C to 5K, couch potato to running 5 kilometers, is 60 seconds of running. And that was hard. 60 seconds was hard when I started. So it's okay to feel like that, particularly on a small startup, because the reason that there's probably more people that feel exactly like you if you're a startup. That's the first thing I want to say, because typically startups can't afford people that have gone through the pain barriers. When we were a startup, we couldn't have afforded, without taking investment and selling a lot of our business, the people that we now have in our business. We couldn't have afforded our fantastic CTO that came from Raytheon. We couldn't have afforded the person who will be our CEO, who has already run like a 15 million turnover business. We couldn't have afforded those people. So we were all learning together. And that is the cool thing about being a startup. The startup has more opportunities, both for success and, more importantly, to fail and learn. So startup culture is great because it allows for that. One of the things, depending upon your personality type, is if there's somebody that you know and like and trust, and know, likes and trusts you within that organization, it's a great opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with a beer and say, oh God, COVID's really hard, isn't it? This is how I'm feeling. That vulnerability, what's the worst that can happen? Either they'll go, oh, it's fine, you're brilliant, or they'll go, I'm feeling vulnerable too. Either way, you're probably going to feel better.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to read the next one?
Yeah. So I have a goal that I'm worried is unreachable because I want to work in a very large company. Is there something you would recommend other than the success file as the motivation and reassurance?
Yeah. Okay. So without knowing exactly what your goal is, that's kind of hard, and why you want to work in a very large company.
Sorry, Nicola. Sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry. I'm just gonna.
But that is what I would suggest. Break that big goal into small steps. You can't climb a mountain unless you've got major connections by going up the escalator. You have to fall sometimes, and sometimes you might go backwards. So small steps.
Thank you, Nicola. That's going to conclude our first.
I think we have one more question.
Yeah, Sabina, you're the next one talking. So
to work for multiple companies if you have split interests, sure, but it's more important is, do the company think that it's reasonable? So we're quite happy for our team members to work part-time and work for somebody else, but you have to make sure there's no conflicts of interests. All
right. Yeah, so I think those are the questions for the moment. If you have other questions, like, everybody can just pop them in the chat and we'll respond to them, like, after I'm gonna.
is useful for both of the last two people. You know, doing stuff that gives you skills that you're not paid for is seen as a commitment to your career.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I think I'm gonna like move in my part of the presentation, and yeah, so I'll present I'll introduce myself again in case there's been people who have joined later. My name is Sabina, and I'm the current running president for Women in Business. For those of you who might not know about our society, we're a society who's focused in empowering women, and we're trying to give them the opportunity to like network, to find more about viable career options. We have a lot of events where we have people talking about, just like Nicola, but talking about experiences with like different companies, whether they're like our sponsors or like just company who would like to collaborate with us. And the reason why we're like so keen to have this collaboration is because one of our goal is to just branch out a little bit and just make sure that we're appealing to all women from like different types of industries. Because I'm doing business management, which is not necessarily like a STEM, it's not the STEM area, but one of the things that I'm passionate about is just like looking at all all different careers and areas, and just seeing how like business and networking and everything just can help you out. Because I think when it comes to just like finding the job or finding like even like an internship or a summer job or anything similar to that, I think networking or just like having this like not only just knowing the people but just having the skill of networking can really help you out. So I think our society would be beneficial to any woman interested in STEM or anything related to that. So that was that about our society. I'm gonna like talk a little bit about like what I've noticed in regards to women in STEM. So currently there are not a lot of us basically to begin with, but I think companies have started to realize that there's a lacking of female voice, and they're from what I've seen, they're like actually taking steps towards changing that, because there are a lot of advantages to having more diversity. It's not just about like looking good and having like a good image that's gonna make people clients just come to you. It's also about like having very different perspectives and just seeing like how a different person with different experiences and different worldview, it's gonna basically have a different solution to your problem. Is gonna have like a different approach, or just even if it's like something that works, maybe like improve, maybe they bring another target of customers, or maybe just find a new issue you didn't even know you had. So I think that's really important for people, women specifically, just to take the chance to look it up and see exactly like all of the STEM opportunities they're like having the imposter syndrome not to apply to. So I would like to talk a little bit about the fact that currently a lot of STEM opportunity just for women. For example, Amazon has this internship network in operation where they're looking for women who studied STEM projects, and they're offering them an internship in between like 3 to 6 months. And they're just saying like, look, we know that women have been underappreciated in operations, and we're really willing to give women and want to like lift women up. We want to have a more female voice. So I think that's like companies and programs just like that. I think they're really beneficial for girls like myself, which are like thinking, oh, am I really like on the same level as other people? Do I really want to do that? But like, just go for it. And if you feel like, oh, I'll like take the easy mode, or just like, oh, like if it's like only for like one demographic, it's just like I might have more chances and you can like realize, oh, like I got this. Maybe I just go to like the main thing, because there are also like a lot of internship who are geared towards just people in general who are interested in STEM or like study STEM. Because I think there's a lot of I know that we have like an increase in the last years of women who've been studying STEM. I've seen a really big increase in especially women who are doing engineering, not so much in tech, but still there's like a number who's like slowly climbing up. And I know there's like people who are not necessarily studying in STEM, but are interested in having a STEM career. So I think that there's been a lot of companies, like there's like Aladdin Waltech, where they're basically saying, look, we have like 2 areas of interest. We have like the software side, and we have like the part where like we're the clients, we're trying to like sell the software. You only need to know the basics. We can like teach you everything else. If you show us that you have like an interest in STEM, you don't necessarily have to be studying STEM. We're like more than willing to help you out, because we think that if you have this wish and if you have the skills to like elect you, we can like teach you the rest. And what else? I think, yeah, just having like just looking up and searching up for opportunities like this. I wanted to also mention like an opportunity that's been like open, like at least, yeah, like it's literally yesterday. It's the Hatla Studios. For those of you who don't know, some of you might know about them, some of you might not, because they're actually an Exeter student group, and they're having their startup, and basically they have quite a lot of programs for Exeter students, and they're looking for people too. I'll just mention a couple. I know that at the moment they're running 6 projects, and I'll touch briefly on them. So they're working with our university just to make sure that they're having like a large scale like digital transformation with COVID and everything going on. Like there's more and more need for technology. And it's great that like our university is like looking for student startups just to like empower them. They recognize like, look, we're having a group of students who like seem to be dedicated, and they also like at the moment just looking for people who like just like them. They want to create software and develop it. And they also, from what I've seen, I think there's a really great opportunity if you just want to give it a go. And I don't think you just for this one's like forget about like imposter syndrome and just go with it. And they're working with the GC fintech, and they're basically just working within the bank sector. And I'm not sure like how, I mean, I'm personally, because I'm doing business, I'm quite interested in like the whole banking sector and making sure that everything is being secured and there's transparency. So yeah, those are like 2 projects. And also mention for those of you who are interested in like elevating arts, they have Movio, which is like a platform for independent filmmakers. So I think it's really interesting to see how they're using software just to like elevate opportunities, not necessarily just related to STEM, but like also just making people appreciate other things as well. So, and lastly, I would like to talk a little bit like more anecdotally, because I know there's a lot of women who are interested in just being part of the STEM conversation, but they don't feel that they have the right education. Like one of my flatmates, she's studying English, and she's quite passionate about like video games. And like in the last couple of years, we've seen like a lot of like resurgence in like video game storytelling. So we have like The Last of Us, which is like most people play that because of the story, and that's been quite a big driver for them. And yeah, she's studying English, she's very passionate about video games, and she's thinking like, this is something that I clearly have a lot of interest in. And in the parts of, when regards to storytelling, I think I can like bring something to the table, but I'm not sure I have the right STEM education. So she, at the moment, she's looking to like, basically she's trying to teach herself programming, and she just like is trying to look for classes and courses, and just like working and just looking for internship that's gonna like allow her to like get closer to her dream, like little steps, because she's willing to take the time. And I think what I like about that is just recognizing like, look, this is what I want to do. These are like my shortcomings, not necessarily having a STEM focused education, and this is like how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna look for the opportunities. I'm gonna try my best just to see that I can do it. And I think when it comes to us women, sadly, it has to like started from us. We had to like work our way to the top with a bit of a fighting, and just like it was started like, yeah, this is our right to vote, and then it goes to like, yeah, this is our right just to be in here at the table having the same conversation as men do. And I think it's getting better, and like as year progress, and we're seeing companies just giving us the opportunity to just follow our dreams. But even with that, it's important to realize that everything just starts from you, and you have to like take this chance to take the leap of faith to put yourself out there and see like, this is what I want to do. These are my shortcomings. This is what I have to offer. How do I go about just like finding this? So yeah, I think that is what I wanted to mostly talk about. I know that my talk might not be as interesting as Nicola, but I'm really glad that people just were willing to listen to me. But yeah, I think, yeah, I think I'm open to lay the floor, just if anybody has any questions. So yeah, thank you so much. Oh, I think Nicola, yes, had some points to say. Yeah, I just seen the chat.
So Sophie is asking, any recommendations for finding more STEM internships opportunities?
Yeah, so I think what I've been doing is basically, if you just like simply just, first of all, you go to Google, you say like you search for STEM opportunities. I've seen a bunch of summer internship. I know MI5 is looking for people at the moment, so that's quite interesting for, I mean, like if people have been watching Killing Eve like me might be interested in that. And yeah, just like you Google it, you go to the career zone, they're like also like societies like Women in Business, like XAI, who are putting a focus on that. And I think we also have like quite good resources when it comes to that. So like, even if you don't necessarily say like, oh yeah, I know this opportunity is gonna it's starting this point in application, we know of companies to like recommend you to. So I feel like, or websites, just like looking at the sponsors, the people who are doing, because I feel like even necessarily not companies feel like necessarily like related to STEM, they still like need STEM related stuff, like technology. It's always gonna be part of most companies, especially now. So yeah, just look at that, just like Google it, just Google career zone societies, sponsors of those societies. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the career fair is going to be this year or how they're going to do that, if that's going to be online or something. Do you know that, Serena?
I've heard talks about probably being online, so yeah, I think they might.
Definitely make sure you use these opportunities, because especially at the career fairs, you get to talk to the representatives of the companies. And especially I learned for myself that is hugely valuable. Sabina, you mentioned the point of networking earlier. If you are able to make a connection with someone there, you already have a foot in the door, because you can mention them when you apply later. You can get more intel on the application process. It can be a huge advantage. So make sure to use all these. Nicola, you're raising your hand.
So obviously we're an employer. we don't have opportunities at the moment because, like many people, we're kind of ramped back. But one of the things I would want to share is quite a lot of people kind of act a bit like baby birds, because that's how the education system almost creates people. You know, it's like, feed me with stuff and I'll deliver whatever it is that you've told me I need to deliver to get whatever it is I need to get. And it's a real disservice, I think, to people entering careers, because that isn't then how the career world works. We tend to work more like you throw wood on the fire and then the flames happen. So that's why I mentioned, you know, like voluntary work or making your own website or coding on the side or whatever it might be. Because sometimes in the competitive environment that you are unfortunately going to face, and that's the reality while we're in the middle of a pandemic and even post-COVID, because it's going to take you are landing at a really crappy time, basically. So the competition is going to be fierce. And, you know, now is the time to start creating some content. You know, if you're literally sitting at home, which you may or may not be, if you've got time, then start looking at what can you contribute to the industry. Start being a producer rather than a consumer. And some of you may already be doing that, and I'll apologize to you if it sounds trite. But genuinely, when I look at who might we employ, and you know, when our HR managers look at who might we employ, and when our team members decide who might we interview, that's exactly what they look at. They go, what kind of person is this person? Are they somebody that we need to feed, or are they somebody that will bring their own sandwiches and want to contribute and be interested? So whatever it is, if there's something that you've been doing for a while, you know, maybe you write a website for your local scout club, maybe you code games in your spare time, maybe you've written some articles that you've not shared with people, whatever it is. Now is the time to make sure that that stuff is visible. And let's face it, for like a tenner, you can get a website with your name on, and you can create a WordPress site, and it just looks so much more professional. And, you know, if you normally like drinking large quantities of whiskey at the weekend, perhaps now might not be the time to stick that on your Instagram feed. Just, you know, having seen some things that people forget about, it's not something that's supposed to be part of people's job considerations, but realistically, you can't guarantee that some people wouldn't do that. So it's just to be aware, really. I don't know whether that helps or not, but
yeah, totally. I mean, if anybody wants to do, like you just mentioned, websites or anything that has to do with tech, feel free to come to our society as well and to ask for advice if you feel unsure that you can't do a website. It sounds daunting, but as you say, Nicola, these days there's actually so much tech that makes it so easy to do.
Yeah, just a WordPress template, and you can. And again, the same thing with you know, CVs. You know, tailor that to what you're trying to do. So if you're wanting to get an internship in creative media, then your CV can be a little bit more bedazzled, shall we say. But if you're trying for an internship in, you know, one of the big four, or somebody that's like an accountancy firm at the back end, then it needs, you know, what they're looking at is, are you going to fit in their environment? And in a competitive world, you possibly want to look at giving yourself as many advantages as possible, or deciding not to work for them because it's going to crush your soul.
Yeah. But I quite like in the UK, it might be, it's a bit different in other countries, but especially here, you like consulting companies are looking for people with a STEM background, and code or software companies are looking for people with a different background, just to get all these, like we're doing today, you get a new perspective. And getting multiple perspectives on a project is really valuable to these companies. But often still people think, like imposter syndrome, you're not fit for this sort of company or role. And that ends up then the people they're actually looking for are minority of them applying. So if you are brave enough. Yeah, sorry.
I found sometimes the larger the company as well, because we had a question earlier about smaller businesses. The larger the company and the higher the salary, the more likely it is that you need to fit a specific thing that they're looking for, because, you know, they're looking for return on that investment quite quickly. So they tend to have criteria because they have more people applying. So they need to quickly be able to discard people. And it's unfortunate if you're one of the people on the discard pile, but it's reality. So I came, so just so you know my background, I did a degree in theology. Before I came back in technology after leaving it, I was an award-winning jewelry designer with multiple jewelry stores. So I'd done technology, found it to be really painful, left technology, and then got sucked back into it by doing a favor for a mate. So, you know, and that was to help them build a business, not a technology company. It just happened to be technology, and I was transferring skills. If you look at tech mums, for anybody that's single parents, and again, that may not be the case for you guys, girls, but if you look at tech moms, founded by Dr. Sue Black, Professor Sue Black, you know, that's for people coming back into the workplace. And some of those folks have been very, very, very successful. So don't discount yourself just because it hasn't got the right thing. You can learn. It's more likely with an SME that you'll get that opportunity. And one of our most successful employees that left the biggest mark on our company that's still being benefited from, joined us when we were 2 people, and she wasn't even working for us. She was actually working for a literary festival that we'd lent the corner of our office to, and she was there go-giving and being delightful and being professional for a charity to help literacy in young people. And our phone kept ringing, so she answered it, and she answered it professionally. And, you know, Titania gave her a job because we needed somebody to do that. And she continually learned, and she learned technology, and she learned doing accounts, and she learned to be our head of marketing. And then she ended up being our operational MD. And I won't give you her final salary, but it was in tens of multiples of what she started on. So, you know, continual learning and investment in yourself is, that was an 8-year period, I will also add. But she probably did more development and growth by stopping exactly where she was than jumping. But, you know, that may or may not help, but that go sideways is what I'd say. Sometimes you can't get to where you want to be straight away. Just go sideways, keep going, keep taking small steps.
If it's okay, I'd like to go back to some of the points you said earlier. So it's going a bit back from the career tour. So you said, if you share your struggle, you give other people the opportunity to share their, or permission sort of, to share their struggle too. Do you have any advice to, if you struggle, to share your struggle? Because I personally find that sometimes very difficult to do.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, actually, it's easier sometimes to share with a stranger, to practice. So I sometimes have people connect with me because I'm very openly autistic. I will occasionally share some struggles that I have there. And sometimes I'll have people connect with me and say, hey, I'm autistic too, but I haven't disclosed. You know, I recently had a recruiter contact me because somebody that was autistic didn't get a job interview because they were told that they came across badly. And my question was, well, did you disclose? And they said, well, they didn't feel that they could disclose because, and I'm not telling you any people here, so this is a kind of redacted. They said they didn't feel that they could disclose because it might disadvantage them. And I'm like, okay, but you didn't get the opportunity anyway because you were being compared unfairly as a neurotypical. So what's the worst that could happen? So yeah, sometimes there's a cost to being vulnerable. You may do it to the wrong person. I would describe myself as a perfectionist who is also somebody who always tries to hope for the best in people. Now, cynical people might say, well, you're always going to be setting yourself up for a fall there, aren't you? And the answer is, yeah, but most of the time I'm pleasantly rewarded and people are awesome. So what would I rather do? Never be disappointed by treating people like they're always out to get me and be cynical, or occasionally be disappointed, but benefit from better relationships in the majority. So it's sometimes easier to join a conversation. There's always somebody on Twitter going, I suffer from depression, I'm having a hard day. You know, and maybe when they're having a good day, not pile on when they're having a hard day, but maybe when they're having a good day later, make a little note of who they are, and message them and say, I appreciated you last week when you shared that because I have a similar struggle. So there's two things there. Do you remember when I said earlier, when you approach somebody, you give them something first, providing it's authentic. So what you are doing in approaching them that way is saying, you sharing your struggle meant something positive to me. Now, for anybody that struggles with mental health challenges, that's probably going to be something that they're very grateful for. And I know that is the case because I kind of do that. I constantly do that as one of my daily things, in that I will try and find somebody that has made an impact on me and thank them for it, because we forget to do that. We're really, as human beings, really keen to say somebody's rubbish, not so keen to go, that person did something useful, let me connect with them. And if you connect with them with something that's about them first, being primates, we're big fans of that, and then say, by the way, I also have that. Is there anything that you've learned? You'll either find that there's some negative stuff that you can avoid or you can learn from, or there'll be some positive stuff that you can benefit from. But the important thing is you've shared. And every time you do it, it gets easier. That's your 60-second run. And then the next time you can run for a minute, and then the next time you can, and suddenly you're running for 4 hours and 5 minutes. So, you know, don't necessarily decide that the person you're going to do it with is the CEO of the business, unless they're a very friendly person and you've shared stuff in the past. But, you know, start with a friend, start with a stranger, start with anybody. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. No, it definitely does. If no one else has any other questions, and Sabina, if you're happy too with that, then I think we would round it off now.
Yeah.
Can I just say, on Twitter, I'm CyberGoGiver. That's the thing I'm on most. So CYBERGOGIVER. If anybody has questions that they don't want to share now, they don't even want to type it out, you know, maybe they're neurodivergent, they're autistic, they're dyslexic, they're having some trouble there, or, you know, they want to ask a specific question, they want to send me their CV, whatever it is. If you want to connect with me there, and if there's something you want to specifically ask, my window is open.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
We will post, or we will send the people who participated the details, so they have it easy to access. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Women in Business for doing this with us. Thank you
for inviting.
Well,
and thank you for your talk, Sabina, because everything you said was absolutely on point and bang on. Absolutely. There's so many statistics that bear everything you said out.
Yeah, sadly, I'm quite aware of that, but hopefully we're getting towards something better.
Yeah, we are getting towards something better. Definitely we are. It just feels sometimes that we're not, because more than anything else, this often feels like one step forward, 2 steps backwards. But maybe we're now taking 2 steps forward and 1 back, so we're moving.
Yeah.
all right. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.